Hello and hello and welcome to the new edition of eDialogues. This webinar series is part of Localization SDG series, jointly organized by CITYNET and All India Institute of Local Self-Government. My name is Abhishek, and I welcome the illustrious panel of speakers who are joining us today, and also all the delegates and the people in the audience. I welcome you all for and thank you all of you for joining this webinar. The topic of today's webinar is building cities and conserving environment, linking growth with sustainable development. So it is very interesting topic. Why? Because when we talk about sustainable development in cities, so the very first question comes to our mind that when we are living close to nature in our villages, in our native places, why do we come to cities? This is very obvious. We all of know that the promise of jobs, prosperity, better services in health, education, public civic services, these things attract us to cities. There are many other factors, but the major one is the prosperity. But this prosperity is coming at what cost? Why we are facing problems in our cities, whether we are talking about environmental degradation, about wetlands, the problem related to the flash flooding in many cities. We have seen such things happening in one of our big cities, including Chennai. In Delhi also we see, in Mumbai also we see, these problems are occurring and these are becoming very frequent. We all know that half of the global population already lives in cities, and by 2050, two-thirds of the world's people are expected to live in urban areas. But in cities, two of the most pressing problems facing the world today also come together: poverty and environmental degradation. We have covered poverty in our earlier webinar, in which we talked about how all of us together can build inclusive cities where we have places for all kinds of people. Those are coming from their villages and far-flung areas. Today's topic, we are going to discuss about environmental degradation, and we look at some very good examples. We have environmental officer from city of Purity, Princessa, because in these times when in COP26, every nation, every city is trying to become carbon neutral. So this is the city that has already become the carbon neutral in Philippines. So we can see what are the best practices and how they are doing it. So we can learn a lot from that city. And that city has also, I think, they ran a campaign in 2016, the love affair with nature. So these kind of initiative, some cities are taking in Asia Pacific, and how this is helping in ensuring that our cities are sustainable, our development is sustainable. The major challenges today we are facing: that poor air quality, water quality, insufficient water availability, waste disposal problems. So we have experts from different regions. I will invite each one of you and give you remarks on how we can make our cities sustainable, and what are the best practices that taken up by different cities around the world. So we will be assessing those initiatives also. So I will not speak much, and I will invite
is happening outside municipal boundaries. So basically, when you look at all of these cities, the green boundaries that you can see here, those are the municipal extents. And when you look at the growth, which is in orange and red, which has happened over the last sort of decade, it has all happened outside of the city. And when you look at where growth has happened, look at urban and the amount. This is the quantity we are adding every year. So about 30 square kilometers of new built up area is being added to our cities. And where are we? We are building on wetlands. This is Bangalore. And actually, 85% of Bangalore's blue-green infrastructure has been encroached upon by built-up area, right? And so then you have this flooding situation with very little rain, and this is happening every day, leading to loss of productivity and economy in the city. Chennai, for example, I mean, one is, the kind of floods that they're facing right now, but they have a very simultaneous dichotomous situation where their reservoirs are drying up because of climate change and that's leading to sort of water scarcity in the city. And not just in Chennai, right? Everywhere. Water shortages are expected because India ranks very high in terms of the world's most stressed cities. And a lot of people, especially the poor and urban poor, are the ones who are most exposed to this risk. Chennai, again, when we talk about what's happening there now, we remember 2015 floods were the most expensive that were recorded. So it was 3 billion USD economic losses that it led to. And if you kind of do the math on the current situation and the number of floods that are happening there and that will be ongoing, that number has just expanded a whole lot. The reason for that is in Chennai, again, the urban settlement increased by 90% outside of the city areas, whereas the natural infrastructure, which is typically present in the outskirts, decreased because we ate it up with built up. And who are the people who are most at risk from all of these impacts? It's the urban poor. One, in terms of heat, heat is a very serious problem and is going to be a very big problem in Indian cities, leading to loss of productivity, leading to loss of, economic value, livelihoods, and also pushing a lot of, marginal communities or people who are on the margins into poverty. So we're looking at the poverty numbers now, but this is going to just increase many folds if we don't do something about it. The other thing that we have to contend is with the financing. So when we look at Indian cities, this is, across the globe, but when we look at Indian cities, they have some of the lowest per capita spending available as far as municipal budgets go, right? And when you look at some of these cities in Copenhagen and Singapore and New York, their per capita spending is really high. So they have the ability to invest in good infrastructure, invest in health, invest in the well-being of their citizens. Now, there's also an inbuilt opportunity in this. 75% of India's 2050 infrastructure is yet to be built, and we have the ability to influence this 1.4 trillion, economy that is going to come in place. Just imagine 35 square meters, billion square meters of built up is going to be added by 2050. So that is the kind of opportunity we have, and we have the, the chance to influence it. Now, green infrastructure is being touted as being very effective in helping cities become resilient and becoming resource secure. And why is that? Because when you add green infrastructure to green-blue infrastructure to gray infrastructure, it has shown to yield optimal and efficient outputs and also made projects very bankable. There are also numerous number of co-benefits that you get which are on the socio-economic side in terms of livelihoods, in terms of food security, carbon sequestration, that you can achieve by putting green infrastructure and preserving blue infrastructure in urban areas. Now, in terms of what India is doing, where we stand, the Ministry of Forest and Climate Change has talked about developing 200 urban forests across India. We're not doing very well on that, first of all. The 15th Finance Commission has also committed to fiscal transfers, incentivizing states which can show large urban forest covers. A lot of cities are also looking at blue-green master plan. Delhi's recent revised master plan draft talks about blue-green infrastructure and how to go about putting that in place. And we have policies which are trying to help. And the interventions when it comes to blue-green infrastructure has happened in Indian cities to a good extent. Some of it has been government-led action. So on the top left, you see the Kolkata wetlands, and that's a great case study which you should look up because it leads to not just blue-green infrastructure preservation. It talks about livelihood generation and important things of socio-economic and environmental benefit. There's also community-led action which is happening in many places, in many rural places, and there are these kind of community actions that we need to kind of replicate in urban areas. Now, there are also solutions at scale. The good news is that you don't need large swaths of land in rural areas to plant trees and to restore degraded land. You can do it in urban areas and at many scales. You can do it at the plot level, at the neighborhood level, street level, at the city, region level. So these solutions are out there and they're available. But there are challenges when it comes to financing NBS still in cities when we're talking about nature-based solutions. First of all, there's a lack of experience. There isn't a very clear-cut case about how economically advantageous these are when compared to gray solutions. There are also all kinds of, procurement challenges, the high capital investment that it sometimes entails. People are unwilling to look at the life cycle costs of it. And there are governance issues, a lot of legacy governance issues, which are hindering the scaling and adoption of NBS in cities. Now, WRI, and I'll just take you through two quick projects that we have been involved in. So mainly we are looking at two problems. You're looking at urban flood and water management, and then urban green cover and biodiversity restoration. Also add air pollution or air quality in it, especially taking into account what's happening in Delhi and northern India. And we're looking at this through both lenses. One is how do you create actions and action plans, and how do you put things on the ground which lead to adaptation and mitigation, but also how do you institutionalize that action so that it can become a default and a de facto sort of a solution, and not just thinking about gray infrastructure when you go to city governments, when you go to implementing authorities. And our approach has been this. One is looking at data-driven decision making. How can you present data to make a compelling case for why this is important? Engaging with key stakeholders and building their capacity. And stakeholders are not just public, public officials and the public sector. There's the private sector, there's the non-profit sector, there's the local citizens in the community, academia. Everybody has a role to play in this. And then finally, looking at integrating and, into institutional structures when you're talking about roadmap for resilience. How do you harmonize these across policies and plans in the city? Now, there is a global platform called Cities for Forest, and Kochi was the first city in India to sign up on it. And we also have Hyderabad and Mumbai who've signed on to this. And there are globally 65 cities. Basically, what they're saying is they've committed to restoration action to conserve forests within cities, in the periphery, and also the forests which kind of lend to the economics of the city, so far away forest. And they look to catalyze political action. They're trying to do this through peer-to-peer learnings. And the idea is how can we build upon these synergies to make nature-based solutions and conservation of urban forest and urban green and blue infrastructure feasible. So quick tale of two cities. This is Mumbai on the left and Kochi on the east. And I'll just tell you, what we've done. We'll start with Kochi. Now in Kochi, a quarter of the population, more than a quarter of the population, A, lives within the floodplains, and B, is exposed to temperatures above 30 degrees, which means they're exposed to heat risk. There are also communities which live on the edges of the water. Coastal areas, as we know it, both Mumbai and Kochi are coastal, are going to be more exposed to climate risk as we go into the future. And there are these problems of low income communities and vulnerable communities which are very adjacent to the natural infrastructure, which are getting impacted on a daily basis. So what we did was basically took a very scientific approach of identifying restoration potential in the city, using community engagement, using participatory mapping tools to say, where is this restoration potential available? And then going about planting different typologies to make the city greener. So this has helped raise awareness on NBS. It has, helped to integrate NBS into policies where now they're looking to, take this into their city disaster management plan. And this has created an endorsement by community and created stewardship of where it is now going to scale on its own. The second thing was looking at individual and community resilience. Now, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So we have to look at the most vulnerable to assess their capacities and resilience to understand if the community will be able to withstand all the climate events that will be happening. And we did the assessment for four vulnerable communities in Kochi. We found that flood prevention infrastructure, for example, is the top of everyone's mind, and that is what is most needed. Some of the broad-based recommendations through the study have been, grassroots level action to strengthen social cohesion, policy interventions, and community level infrastructure development for disaster resilience, especially floods. And so basically, we have been looking at bringing all the stakeholders together, a people-centric decision-making model, and building their capacity so that everyone can act towards bringing adaptation and mitigation action to the city. And like I said, we have been looking at influencing the city disaster management plan, which will soon be under preparation, and basically taking the city from a rescue and recovery sort of mode into a more preparedness and resilience mode. So typically disaster management plans are focusing on rescue, recovery, what happens post-incident. But what we are saying is you need to be prepared pre-incident. And so how do you institutionalize some of this through the CDMP? The second very quick example is Mumbai. Now, we did some assessments and we found that in Mumbai, when you look at two neighborhoods, Dharavi and Matunga, Dharavi is about 5% hotter than its immediate neighbor. And there's a huge socioeconomic difference between these two neighborhoods. And what you see is that the green infrastructure in Dharavi is severely lacking. And that is what Matunga has, which makes it cooler. And so we've kind of conducted these citywide assessments. We've also looked at, what are the trees that are present in Mumbai, which are the trees outside forests in urban areas, what is their sequestration potential. So we're looking at establishing some baselines and then talking about it in very scientific terms about, if you want to take climate action, how do you go about it? Where do you plant trees? Where do you, put in natural capital? How much? And what kind of species, etc. The same is the case if you look at a road. And we just did this, road surface temperature mapping. And we found that, there are neighborhoods which are which kind of go through, lower income groups, which don't have trees along those streets, facing heat risk. And there are very simple solutions like, this is a rudimentary illustration, but to give you an idea that there are simple solutions of integrating green into gray infrastructure. And so we're also participating and we're kind of helping bring the Mumbai Climate Action Plan into life. And the idea is that the targets that we will set out for adaptation and mitigation, we hope to do some pilots to show the city how some of those targets are actually achievable. So to end, I would like to say this, that when you look at nature-based solutions, the most important thing is working with all the stakeholders, engaging everybody, because everyone has a role to play in terms of policy, in terms of promoting innovation, in terms of channeling finance, in terms of bringing evidence-based research to convince the political economy, to convince bureaucrats, people who have decision-making powers in cities, and also NGOs and citizens who have action on the ground influence. So I will stop here. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to take any questions in the chat box.
Thank you so much, your presentation. It's very interesting that the work in Mumbai that you have showed to us about how Matunga and Dharavi are different because of the number of trees present there, and there are other factors also. So, but I will be very interested because in Urban Update magazine that we bring out, we cover these kind of issues, and we will like if you can write one article for this December edition, that will be really. Over to Mr. Raman. So, for your presentation and remarks.
Thanks. I hope I'm audible. So I will start from where Jaya, about the climate action plan, initiative in Mumbai. I was part of the city planning processes in Delhi quite recently, and what I understand is that the fragmented nature of our planning, when we are doing climate plan, that is one segment. When we are doing disaster mitigation or preparedness plan, that is another piece of work. And when we plan the sanitation, that is something else. And then when we plan the overall development of the city, that stands as a very separate and different piece of work. So I'm sure that Mr. Kadler and who achieving a city to carbon free kind of carbon emission free, or what we are talking about, whether it is of flooding, whether it is of various disasters. So this integration of planning, how to get these elements done, is something that we all need to really prioritize. Given that Mumbai, Chennai, in 2015-16, when the things were happening, we thought that the city will learn. But the incident very recently that happened very clearly suggests that, yes, some preparedness measures have been put in place that reduce the mortality, and related, losses to a lot. But how to, make the city responsive or to put in place the preventive measures for in a way that avoiding or averting many of the problems is still a question that standing in front of almost all cities, Chennai just being an example. Bangalore becoming an example for the water, what you call no water kind of situation, or ground zero, kind of situation. So at the same time, our cities are planning. At one point, they are struggling with water scarcity. At another point, they are trying to prevent flood. I mean, this extreme this is going to be a major kind of. So within this larger context, what I'm going to very quickly put up is about the water or the wash segment of it, how to integrate what segment in the overall city planning, including climate action planning and overall development planning, and the disaster mitigation planning. So the problem is that when water sanitation is being planned, others are not taken into account in the way they should have been given priority, because every department is more thinking about their focused, particularly infrastructure and technology takes over the entire planning processes, not necessarily the environmental concerns, not necessarily the broad life and the livability of the city quite often doesn't take place, whether it is various segment of land. I'm not just talking because I have worked as the director of a government department in two states, health department in two states, whether it's Chhattisgarh, whether Uttarakhand, and then I have also worked in the NGO segment, also worked part of the government missions. So every time the problem is that it looks like this. You can only the kind of a tunnel vision. You can only see things from the perspective of what you have prioritized, rather than seeing the whole thing and then putting things into perspective. So this is one area that I put as the initial kind of thought. The second thing is, the cities have to, all city plannings, as I see, including the wash planning that I'm talking about, is very short term. So that is something, how we can see the city. We are talking about sustainable development goals. We're talking about 2030. But what is beyond 2030? How we want to see the expansion of the city. Where are we seeing the city peripheries in, say, after 20 years or so, and what are the systems, at least modularly, we need to think about for addressing some of the potential problems that the city can face, given the population expansion that we are seeing in most of our cities, and kind of rural poverty leading to vulnerability, add vulnerabilities to the urban poor, and urban poverty is expanding because of the rural poverty and rural unemployment. So this integratedness of problems need a integrated kind of solution thinking as well. So I will put up a very quick case of an effort that is being done in one of the urban one of the parts of the National Capital Territory of Delhi, which is Gurgaon. So we have a collective called Gurgaon Water Forum. The Gurgaon Water Forum is a collective of citizens and administrators and civil society organizations, and specifically those working in those regions, the unions and associations in that area, all encompassing kind of organization or a platform that is being being set up in the city of Gurgaon. So the Urban Development Authority. So we were trying to engage with the Urban Development Authority for understanding many of the issues and problems that the city of Gurgaon community participation processes, and also preparing the elected representatives. Jaya put up the case of Kerala, wherein decentralization, which is one of the topics that we are talking about, has taken place in a meaningful manner, wherein the urban authorities and the urban bodies are having not only the functionaries and finances that is required for driving the forces of development and driving the forces of whether it is disaster resilience, whether it is environmental, kind of, I would say, security for the time being. All that require this element of decentralization. But unfortunately, in many of our other towns, we are not seeing this kind of decentralization. So engaging with the members of elected members of the urban body, engaging with the officials, and making them this understanding of the connectedness of various problems, because every problems are seen in a disconnected manner, in a differentiated and disintegrated manner. So how to make them integrated and that understanding, and then a comprehensive solution kind of arrangement, how can we make and how can we fix, wash into the integrated urban environmental conservation agenda, is something that we were trying in Gurgaon. Similarly, health also is having many of these problems are leading to health problems. So resilience also in that sense, we need to focus on the preventive side of resilience rather than what you call preparedness side of resilience. Quite often resilience is understood, although resilience word, preparedness was replaced with resilience, but still we understand resilience from preparedness point of view quite often. So this is something that we need to really make the people, the officials, the people, and the elected representative of that area, that the resilience needs to be seen from mostly a preventive point of view, and within that what all are the key things that they need to make. So then the stormwater management, grey water management, and the water body protection, water quality management, water supply management, and preventing one other point, important point, is that there are people affected by periodic disasters. The urban poor, on the other hand, is living within disasters. The urban flooding is a reality in whether it is Delhi, Gurgaon, many other cities, wherever water aid is working. We have seen that this flooding is part of day-to-day life of most of the urban poor communities, given the places that the free places that they get for putting their temporary residential arrangement or slum settlements, whatever. So when we make this, then we can have strategies for integrated strategies for looking at things, and doing citizen sciences as a method for understanding the problem. Because citizen sciences is not really understood in our urban context. In the rural context, participatory research and various things process in a much better fashion. But given the complexity of the urban settlements, specifically the urban poor settlements, making them to participate in the knowledge generation process and knowledge imparting processes is quite challenging. So how to make citizen sciences to lead the knowledge generation processes is an important segment when it comes to integrating this. So with that, how can we look at ensuring rainwater harvesting in urban spaces wherein almost all the spaces are closed? How to make sanitation safe? How to make the lives of workers safe? Specifically, most of the workers are in the poor segments they are living. So that way, and how to improve the water quality. These are the kind of questions that we are seeing. That it's a very beginning of this Gurgaon Water Forum, but we have faced some setback because of the COVID also. So we are not progressed much. But what we have initially seen is the reality that when a citizen, elected representative, and officials can sit together and start to think together, the solutions are more practically evolving. And I think there is a way forward for integrating wash and health into the city's environment conservation agenda in a very what you call step-by-step and incremental manner, and we can take it into a long-term approach. I'll stop here and glad to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raman, for your introductory address. And you have raised very crucial questions. When we are looking at cities, there are two sides. When we are facing drought, and other side, we are facing floods. So we need to make our policies and plans accordingly, so that these extremes we do not face in cities, and cities have better resources. If we see when we talk about the floods in rural areas and far-flung areas, But cities are better resourced. If they are not, then nobody is. So we need to make sure that they become resilient over a period of time. And I also congratulate you for this Gurgaon Water Forum that you have initiated. And I think such initiatives will definitely bring about changes, and how this integrated approach in planning initiatives will definitely help. Now, I would like to move to Mr. Kadeler Stevie Angel for his introductory remarks. And I would be very specific when I'm asking him to present about the success story of Purity Princesa and how they have become carbon neutral. And definitely the presentation he has, he will definitely explain that. Over to you, Mr. Kadeler.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. To our panels, to everyone, pleasant day. I just want to share with you Puerto Princesa City's decentralized initiatives in building cities while conserving the environment. I just want to share with you a video so that it will guide me with regards to the time, but I won't extend too much.
Sure, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Are you seeing the video presentation? Our city total land area of 200 happening population. The resources are happening in our city. First, rapid urbanization. Decades ago, the city suffers from typhoons and other natural calamities. But now, the city feels extreme and changing climate conditions. In the past, when it was summer, it was really summer, which means no rains and the sun shone bright. Now, during summer, there is drought and increased temperature. Then there will be heavy rain. So, mangrove and forest deforestation, solid waste problems are some of the causes with negative effects of climate change. So that's a clear impact of climate change. Hence, the challenge for the local government units is to ensure between the balance of development and environment. That is why we have here a local government code of 1991 that mandates the LGUs to maintain the balance of ecology and at the same time provide services for the welfare of their constituents. In compliance thereof, the city drafted a vision to be a most livable city, demonstrating a proper balance between development and environment with inclusive economic growth, inhabited by self-reliant, empowered, and compassionate citizens. So, to fulfill this vision, the following green initiatives which are institutionalized through local legislation and embedded in the Office of the City Environment and Natural Resources are continuously implemented. Here you are showing, you are seeing the tree planting activity spearheaded by our Honorable Lucido R. Mayron, our City Mayor. Other initiatives are the Pista ng Festival, or what we call the Feast in the Forest. It is actually a celebration where it is massive planting of forest species in the watersheds and other denuded forest areas and abandoned close to qualified are done yearly and participated in by different sectors of society. The students, the NGO, uniform personnel, and others are joining as one in just that kind of celebration. So part of its installation, it was created that every last Saturday of June, it will be Pista ang Festival. So more than 2.5 million were already planted, covering more or less hectares. So love affair with nature. The third activity, Puerto Princesa celebrate love affair with nature every 14th day of February with mangrove planting and mass wedding. It is to compensate the Pista ng Festival, which is planting of forest trees. Here we plant mangroves. So we already have planted more or less 100 hectares with 100,000 seedlings. Also, we have urban forestry. Since rapid urbanization does not scare the city, and it contributes relatively great in the landscape and vegetation of our urban area that contributed to urban heat. The city government of Puerto Princesa, through the Office of the City Enro, implements urban forestry program. So we have here the establishment of forest in 3 parts like the Balayong Park. Assessment of existing tree parks and private and commercial establishments using the i3 tool technology, which was developed by the U.S. Forest Service and our Wildlife Management Division also conducts regular bird monitoring, response. Also, the marine turtle hatchlings releases to know the current status of our environment and life are the best indicators of the health of our ecosystem. Our office behavioral change campaign, capacity building activities, IEP, and puppet show. Every resident, especially to our children, the love and care to environment and natural resources, since they are our future. So to conclude, the city government, Princesa, through the Office of the City Enro, may face difficulties and challenges. However, it won't just sit down and watch Puerto Princesa experience disasters. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kadila, for your this video. And this video has showed us a lot of things that how citizens were engaged with this love affair with nature campaign and other initiatives taken by the local leader, the city mayor, and which in most of these initiatives the citizens were involved. So that is a very good sign, and that is I think that is why the conserving biodiversity and natural ecosystem, the city has been able to achieve the carbon neutrality. When the world is talking, you have already achieved it. Congratulations for that. And I'm very sorry that I missed your introduction, so I will just read it out for everyone attending. Mr. Cardelas TV Angela Mandarin is working as the Senior Environmental Management Specialist for the City Government of Puerto Princesa since 2006. Belonging to the City Environment and Natural Resources Office, he is also a registered environmental planner. Mr. Mandarin did his Master of Science in Environmental Management and Public Administrations from Palawan State University in Philippines. This is his introduction, and I would like to express my thanks to him for this presentation and telling us how his city is taking initiatives for conserving environment at the local level, what kind of initiatives his city is taking. Now I would like to move to Mr. Ranjan Panda, who is convener at Combat Climate Change Network India. And Mr. Panda is popularly known as Waterman of Odisha and Climate Crusader, and he was awarded with first Green Hero Award in December 2010 by NDTV. He received this award from the President of India at that time, Pratibha Patil. Recently, he was also profiled as Odisha's Conservation Master by Hindustan Times, very recently recognized as Mahanadi River Waterkeeper by the New York-based Global Waterkeeper Alliance. He has about 2.5 decades of experience in leading several environmental conservation and human rights initiatives in the state of Odisha and different parts of India. Over to Mr. Panda, but Mr. Panda is also to you because you are living very close to nature and you work very closely with the people, tribals of India. So we would like to know about your experience and how their relation with nature and how urban people have relation with nature and why it is important to have a close relation. Please enlighten us. Over to you, Mr. Panda.
Thank you, Abhishek, and thanks all the speakers for the wonderful presentations. To be the last speaker is always very challenging because, and also it's an opportunity because what have been covered and what is not covered. So, every presentation speaks about basically 2-3 things. So every city is now, cities as we all know are basically the water guzzlers, the most greenhouse gas emitters, and their energy requirements actually are not limited to their own geographies, but that spans across the globe, all rural areas and all. But at the same time, cities are also trying to bring in greenery, back to their landscapes. In some places, of course, they're also trying to save the water resources. But then cities also have citizens. They also have communities. So this is somewhere I think a lot needs to be actually discussed at this moment is, what are these communities actually? Our own experience is cities are absorbing a lot of rural communities, indigenous communities, who at a point of time, for various reasons, as I think some speakers already said, I think at the introductory to the webinar also it was said that, prosperity, hope, a dream. So cities are happening places. They are places with ideas. They are places with, ideas for growing your own, socioeconomic status. So everybody looks up to the city to grow. But then there is a kind of a growth that actually happens to the city and then comes and actually vanishes. That's what I always say. is the traditional knowledge to conserve natural resources. So what we are actually now doing, as climate change is, sort of exaggerating, or actually accelerating the process of displacement from rural areas to cities. Millions of people are now bringing them into the cities uh, for whatever reasons, forced by climate change, forced by other factors, or being pulled by prosperity prospects. So whatever it is, they also bring in with them a lot of knowledge that is traditionally, if we actually look into from Indonesia, from India, from Philippines, from even many American countries, from Australian Australian provinces. So I think everywhere, the Congo Basin, the Amazon, everywhere, the rural communities are also treasure house of knowledge on local natural resources. So they, while the cities are actually struggling to bring in nature into them, and in a way are trying also to address their psychological concerns. I'm talking in a very different aspect on this, because every city is actually are stressed cities. So is शहर का हर शख्स परेशान सा क्यों है? You must have heard that. So every urban citizen is a stressed person, and but then unfortunately and fortunately, they are also bringing in people who loved nature, who stayed with nature. They might not have prospered well economically, or they might not have got the kind of education and other health facilities, and they might have, that's why pushed them into the cities, or maybe forced into the cities. But they are the people who are still having some experiences living with nature. So in the city, when we are talking about, in fact, urban spaces, when we are talking about people, must interact with these elements. Like everybody is, looking into green infrastructure, but there should be communities, there should be people who actually should have the experience of, interacting with all the elements of nature, with using more of their senses, in order to experience both physical and psychological benefits of nature. That's only when you can actually bring in an element of sustainability in what you are calling a resilience building within the city limits. All these are concerns, genuine concerns. No two wings of a city planning authority actually works together. The one that looks into urban was is actually not coordinating with the one that is actually looking into your forestry programs, urban forestry programs. The ones who are actually looking into your waste management wings are not in sync with the lake development wings. So kind of all these are challenges. But then I would say at the fundamental level, there is a challenge in the cities, which is, we don't have, communities anymore. We have definitely user associations, apartments, housing societies, but we are losing out on the communities. We are losing out on the people who actually feel for their geography, feel for the water they are using. So many, like I am working with youths at the moment. For last 3 years we are investing a lot on the urban youths, and of course rural youths as well. So what we see is there are different kind of people in a city. We all know that. So during the COVID, what we saw was, there were one kind of people who are actually missing the nature, because they had lived some of their life at least in villages, and now they have shifted their old people and people of generations that is still having some knowledge and some history with living with nature. But these completely the young people in cities, which actually are who are actually going to build our cities and their sustainability, and who are actually going to be part of your all the green infrastructure that you are talking, and whatever efforts that we are bringing in to make cities green spaces. So they are, our perception study in the city said they were not much missing the nature. Like they were very happy with the mobile, phone, and they were not missing the nature as their fathers were doing. But then, as soon as lockdowns open, they freak out to clubs or maybe other places. But many of their parents would always like to freak out to some picnic spots, some local forests, some water bodies. So I think there are, like this is just an overall assessment I am saying. There are all nuances in that. So I think we have to now see that what kind of communities we are actually bringing up. Are we really serious about engaging with the communities? If at all we are serious about engaging with the communities, then we have to work at the psychological level as well. And that is somewhere I think many of the programs at this moment, as far as my understanding goes, are missing. So if we actually try to build a collective baseline, to our better understanding and appreciation of the natural world within the cities, then I think we have to also try to build at a psychological level, because that is where you connect. Because if I am now acquainted to connect more with the concrete, if I am now acquainted psychologically, mentally to connect more with a mobile phone, then my love for a tree will only be limited to whatever big funda is being given on greenery. So a young person may not be able to distinguish between the benefit of a local natural species for a tree species and an alien species. So many of the forestry that are also being promoted in cities are of species that quickly grow, that don't actually require a lot of efforts. So because people are not there, because communities are not involved, it's just a project. So I think many places that's what my observation is. So I think that is where I think a lot of effort is actually needed. So definitely we should have office spaces with windows, with free air and coming in. We should have trees where birds are flocking. We should have muds where we can actually dip our feet inside. But then all that can sustain if we have psychologies, if we have mindsets that actually love nature with their all senses on. So that there it happens an interaction as nature interacts within itself, as trees interact within themselves, as birds interact with the trees, as the water interacts with the local geography. So I think people as part of the ecosystem should also be able to interact with these natural systems, with these natural ecosystems. I think that is where we have a lot of knowledge, a treasure house of knowledge already existing in the urban slums, the newly developing suburbs. Many people have come from villages and they have lived with nature much directly than all of us have. So I think if we actually work with them, if we bring in them into the urban planning, if we ask them how did they actually love the kind of water resources they used to nurture, like India is home to some of the very wonderful community forest management initiatives in the world, like many other countries are, like other South Asian countries are. So I think they have that knowledge with them. So they have the knowledge because my research and our research, our work says that they love forest as their forefathers. They love forest as their brothers. They love forest as their family members. So I think that's how they nurture. They use the forest for their benefits, of course, but they nurture it. But here, the knowledge should not be just a fund, sort of an academic knowledge. Okay, trees are carbon sinks, so let us have trees. Trees give us, sort of green spaces, so let us just, just grow trees. So, growing trees as a project mode is definitely something else than actually growing tree on a love mode. So I think that love it requires a lot of psychological intervention, and for that to happen, we need to create urban citizens as actually human beings, as actually nature lover communities. So I think somewhere down the line, all the programs, all the policymakers, all the planners, all the organizations that are involved in this should now start working at that level of education to actually integrate a psychology of love for nature. And for that, a lot of these rural communities who are in fact also, sort of preserving a lot of your watershed heads for all the cities waters. More than 78% of water actually for the cities come from the rural watersheds. So I think they are the people who have been preserving your watersheds. They are the people who are now somehow stressed and coming to your places to work as maids, domestic servants, and all. But there are also, these are also people who are treasure house of knowledge, of sustainability, of something that the world is actually now looking for. The communities who have been preserving almost 38 to 40% of all your remaining natural green spaces throughout the world. So these are the same people, when they come to the cities, they become maid servants. They become just, people who are illiterates. They become people who are just to be utilized for your manual jobs. So I think there is somewhere down the line, we need to distinguish between people and between actually so-called citizens. I think we should also harvest that knowledge. We should also try. I have not done that, so I should not preach, but I think I feel very strongly that we should in cities, we should try doing that. We should actually have brains together, coming together, and see how cities can actually integrate these people into the planning, into the natural planning. If at all cities want to actually defeat their own created destructive way of growth. I think I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ranjan. You have it is always pleasure to listening to your views on nature and water. So this, I think the main highlight, this every speaker has talked about citizen science, community knowledge, and inculcating that into the planning. And you have mentioned very rightly that if we take planting trees as a project, that is not going to be very successful, because when people are associated, because planting a tree by government, because we have seen in many states the government has planted 2 million trees, 5 million trees, but what happened to those trees after that? If nobody is taking care of them, what will happen to those trees and plants? So it is about if we take them as family members, if we take care of them, so definitely that love for nature in communities should be focused on and should be advocated. Thank you so much for your presentation, for your remarks on this particular theme. And at the local level, definitely we can take many decentralized initiatives by encouraging communities, by bringing them on board and taking making use of the knowledge they have on natural ecosystem. We have a couple of questions from the audience. The first question that came on our Facebook Live, that is from Vidya Sagar Pancholi. He's asking, what are the political issues that you faced in your interventions connecting gray with blue-green infrastructure? That question is directed to Ms. Jaya Dhinda. I think she's not available. So, but I think this question I can direct to Mr. Ranjan Panda also. So, what is your view on this?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting question. In fact, political will is something that we are all looking for. I mean, cities are basically economic hubs, and cities are also political hotspots. So I think in many places there is a direct fight between greenery and gray infrastructure. So people in the cities, they don't really want any space to be left. They want a water body. For us is actually a real estate for them. So and many of their interests are related to making money. So everybody is actually in the city. Everybody feels that in the city I should make money, and I should then spend it in some ecotourism space, and that is my love for nature. So I think this is the attitude that stays in the cities, and that's why politicians are also facing a lot of challenges. Some politicians who want to talk green, I know they are not the actually most popular politicians in this country. So they would not make any sense to many of their followers. They would not get the votes. So I think anybody who is helping people to establish their commercial establishments at the cost of nature are the real messiah in a city. So I think in this place, politicians are also facing challenges, and there is a direct conflict between these two. So whenever we also raise issues, the same thing happens. There is a lot of support for people who want, uh, like my own experience. I am telling you, in my own neighborhood, when I started to protest against conversion of a water body to a uh, cricket field, I think the local youth opposed that idea, because and the politicians, actually some of them were very sensitive to the issue. They realized that I was making sense, my group was making sense, but these youth were actually their campaigners during the voting, during the urban elections and all. So they face these challenges. So I think that's why a lot has to be actually, if there is something that needs to be done uh, at the policy level, then that is very strong environmental vision planning for our cities at this moment, because we are going to live in the cities much for more time than ever before, and more people than ever before. So I think somewhere down the line, the political will has to be very strong, and that should actually not care about votes and other factors. Otherwise, as the UN Secretary General rightly said, we cannot continue to treat nature as our toilet. So cities are actually treating nature as their toilets. They're just dumping everything into nature, and they feel that nature can continue to give them the ecosystem service. So I think politicians need to understand this, and they should draw a line between how much they can actually destroy natural resources. I think still it is a very difficult task. So I don't have an answer, but then this is my experience. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And there is one more question related to that. I think but you have answered this question already. This fragmented nature of planning at the policy level is because of the lack of synergies with the political forces. We never find political agents campaigning as a climate change activist. Neither do the communities ask their representative to use their authority for implementing climate justice. So I think this is a kind of a statement that one of the attendees have made. I think we agree to that we do not see political people as climate change activists. There will be some exception, definitely, but overall, if we say that generally they are not. You have answered the question that that person has asked. So one more, there are a couple of more questions. There is one question that I will like to direct to Mr. Raman.
Can I add a point here? To the previous question, I would like to add a point.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you
So
can
before
add. I'm asking question to you only, so you can add along with that.
Okay.
That community and local knowledge through which are pulled back on its account of efficiency, since they do not incorporate advanced technologies. So how can we integrate community knowledge with today's technology for green infrastructure? This question is to you, sir.
Okay. Very interesting question also. So I'll go to the first point, which Ranjan was very importantly making. One added potential and possibility to this is, this urban landscape. If you see the urban landscape, we can actually categorize them into well advanced cities wherein the industry, the occupations, and the kind of employment all are a particular level, wherein the youth and people over there are of a particular nature, and the leadership emerging, including the political leadership I'm talking about, is in a particular nature. But when you see to the emerging towns, which are tomorrow's urban landscapes, small towns and medium towns I'm talking about, the small towns and medium towns are having a major political intervention space now to engage with the elected representatives and political party leaders and also the citizens, because their sizes are population sizes are from some kind of 5,000 to say running over few thousands, like 100,000s or something like that. So this range, engaging with the citizens, engaging with the communities, engaging with the people who have migrated from rural areas for their livelihood.
You are muted.
This year compared to what we see as in other advances. So that is one answer. Second part is of course the traditional wisdom versus modern technology. This is all this particular problem is a serial problem that we see. So that is where I told you that administrators, technologists, communities, and citizens in the Residents Welfare Association. So we need to have a composite and integrated fashion of planning, and that can only kind of address the problem. So wherever we need advanced technology, then we need to look at those people who know about technologies, and wherever traditional wisdom is going to guide us, we need to look at the people who are actually maybe they are rickshaw pullers in your city, maybe they are daily wages workers in your city, they are the maids of your city, but you need to ask them how to look at this problem and how to solve this problem. But they may not be able to suggest you the high technology kind of issues. For that we have already engineers and technologists and advanced. So this mixing of various types of audience, users and communities is the way forward, because the users quite often they don't have the ownership to the city, and the communities they don't have the ownership to the city. So how to develop and inculcate that ownership in this process of planning is the way forward for this, I think. Thank you.
Mr. Raman, and there is a question about the community engagement. I would like to direct to our another panelist from the Philippines. But there is two questions that I would like to club, that we have laws and rules for the regulation of activities which harm the nature at large. However, the result to these regulations are minimal. Cities are occupied with people who are focused on their personal development. How can we sensitize them in a better manner so that urban regions can be better managed? And the other question that will go along with this is increased interaction with the environment of the city users might increase their connect to the communities that are slowly becoming extinct. However, we do have parks in urban areas, but clearly it is not enough. What else can civic bodies do to work towards lowering the gap between cities and nature in this regard? So that civic bodies and the relation with the community and how to sensitize community or the city users. This question is directed to Mr. Cardilla.
I just want to share our experience here in Puerto Princesa with regards to the interaction from the urban settlers with regards in contrast to the rural settlers. Here in our city, the urban settlers or those who settle in population areas in the urban, we ensure that we have a parks, and we also have small parks because we promote here as one of our programs is the urban forestry. We have indigenous forestry species which can be found in our forest and then bring it here in the urban areas, because we know the importance of urban areas in our economy. This is what drives the city to be highly urbanized city, the development in the urban areas. But however, it is complemented with from the rural areas with regards to the management of our natural resources, including its wildlife. So here we do have a balance in order to have sustainable development. So the question there is, how did we do it? It's first and foremost because of the policy. We, as under the executive department, we are here to recommend to the legislative the proper action, particularly with regards to the environmental protection and conservation, and to complement that with our planning office, since they are the ones or since the planning office is the one who directs the sure of our uh, of our local chief executive, which is the mayor. So with that, proper coordination and leveling of the priorities in order for us to have or to answer the urban problems or issues, and to balance that with our management of our rural areas, which more are more naturally capacitated to support the demand of the urban area. So that I think that's all I can share with regards to the to lessen the gap between the urban and rural settlers or the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kadler. And I think that the policies that we have at the local level, this is a very big issue that we try to address. As Mr. Kadler was telling, that local government code that they had developed in 1991. In India also, we had the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act implemented for taking initiatives at the local level for the pressing issues that cities or the local governments are facing. So that was started in India also approximately 20, 30 years ago. But now the main problem in the implementation is a lot of schemes and the programs are being developed at the national level, and these plans are being these local bodies are just becomes the implementing agencies. So we need to think about how this decentralization mission that the government of India has, so giving more power for policy making and the financial resources they have access to. And that is also very important, that if a city has financial resources, they can take many initiatives under the existing paradigm also. So there are many challenges that financial capacity of local bodies and the administrative authority. So we need to work on that. And this, if all these cities, when we are talking about building cities and conserving environment with decentralized initiatives, every city, every town in India and in Asia Pacific, they have to really work on how to make their development sustainable, green, and inclusive also, because when we are going to engage community, so it has to be inclusive. The city has to be built for everyone, whether the person is poor or rich, able or differently abled, men or women. Even we're taking into account the needs and requirements of the complete ecosystem, including animals and our biodiversity, everything. So for this, in this webinar, we have got many key action points for urban local bodies, in which if they can take cue from these the remarks and the address of our panelists. So there are many action points with that can be developed upon, and we will Urban Update also will be bringing out the detailed report of this webinar in the next edition of our magazine, and that will be available to everyone to access. It will be available on our website, and this of course this webinar will also be available on our YouTube channel and our social media handles. So thank you everyone for joining for this webinar, especially our panelists and attendees who were part, and they raised very important questions about what are the problem areas where local bodies needs attention, and what are the key technical areas where we need intervention specifically. Thank you very much. And we will be meeting you very soon in our next webinar. Till then, keep reading Urban Update on our website and our social media handles. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Abhishek.
much for inviting, and it was a great experience. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye. See you.
Bye. Take care, all of you.
All of you.
Be safe.